Mind the gap.
Hi Fabrizia, good evening.
Hi, Hugo. How are you?
I'm doing good. I don't know if you can maybe, well, be able to hear it in the background, maybe thunder clapping around here. We're in a thunderstorm right now, so I hope the light will stay on. I don't know. Let's hope for the best. How are you doing? How's your move going?
My move is messy,
Okay.
but I am hopeful that when the truck comes, we'll just throw stuff in it and it'll all go away.
Great. So this week we have a special episode because so far we've been just you and me talking, exchanging ideas, and talking about what we're passionate about. But today it's a special episode because we have a guest. We have a guest who has been a friend of mine for quite some time. Actually, I've interviewed him already for a couple of times on the other podcast that I do, that is the Traveling Image Makers, and where we talk about travel photography. But so let's just introduce the guest, and then we'll talk maybe about the circumstances of why we have him here. His name is Marc Silber, and is connecting with us, if I'm not mistaken, from Carmel, California. Right, Marc?
That's right. That's right. Carmel, California.
I have been there.
Have you? Okay.
And I have really fond memories of
Oh, it's
that
beautiful
place.
here.
Magical place.
I think it's so similar to places I've been in Italy too. We have that similar climate and artistic kind of background. We're right on the ocean, somewhat like the Mediterranean here. So we feel a great kinship. We drink a lot of your Italian wine here as well.
I must visit now.
Yeah.
I must come back. I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was I drove down from San Francisco to Pismo, and
that's a great drive.
And Carmel really made an impression. It's lovely.
When was that? I did that route. Oh wow, that was in '94, I believe.
Yeah, Ansel Adams lived just a few miles south of me here, and Edward Weston as well, just a few miles. There's been a lot of artists here that have come to Carmel because of its sort of inspirational qualities. So that's when I started writing my books, when I moved here. So hey, maybe it works.
Yes. I think Clint Eastwood was mayor when I was there.
He was our mayor, and he has a hotel within walking distance. We walk by there all the time.
I went to his
I've seen him.
We got a note, and then we got a thing in our hotel. We had a letter signed, welcoming guests. It was like, oh wow! You go somewhere, you get letters from. Yeah, it was exciting. Anyway, yeah.
He's a good neighbor.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I definitely need to come back.
Anyway, just to give a little bit of introduction of Marc to those who are at least hearing about him for the first time. Marc, you're a photographer, video maker, educator, a veteran of the industry, and it's always a great pleasure to talk to you because you've just such a nice and fun person to talk to. A lot of inspiration.
Thank you.
Anything you would like to add to this very short description?
I've been a mountaineer my whole life. I was a mountaineering instructor and have climbed all sorts of different mountains and gone on expeditions. And that's also allowed me to access some pretty cool places in terms of creativity that I write about in the book, going to Mexico and even the Alps. So that's been part and parcel of, for me, being outdoors and loving the outdoors has always been a creative inspiration for me.
Do you still do your YouTube channel, video channel?
I do. In fact, I've let it go for a while because I've been so involved in the book, which is something you should never do. But we shot an episode today. I'm going to do a whole new series on the book and creativity. So we're kind of re-energizing that as of today, as a matter of fact.
So let's talk about the book because, as I said, you were on my other show a couple of times, and then I got an email from somebody from your team who said, "Do you know Mark has a new book? Would you like to chat with him about the new book?" And he sent me a description of the book, and I said, "Wow, that's really something that resonates with what we are doing on this podcast, which is all about creativity and growing as an artist." So the book is titled "Create," right?
Yep.
The subtitle is Tools from Seriously Talented People to Unleash Your Creative Life. So it really fits to a T with what we're talking here.
That's great. You know, it's funny, a little anecdote. I was thinking about this the other day. You know, you struggle with titles. The book actually was titled The Art of Living originally. And I decided not to go with that because there were 3 other books with the same title, even though they were very different. I just didn't want to get confused in that, the title itself. So we struggled on what should we call this thing? And finally the word create just came to my mind. I thought, just call it Create. But then the subtitle didn't come to me, and I was taking a shower. I had one of those inspirational moments in the shower. And I thought, yeah, that's what the book is about. It's about tools from really talented people. So, that all sort of snapped together at one moment. It's funny how these things happen, though.
So the book has parts where it's just you writing, and then each section or chapter at the end is an interview with a creator, with an artist, not
That's
always
right.
a photographer. I mean, I think maybe there's 1 or 2 photographers only in there, right?
Exactly. I tried to limit the number of photographers that I interviewed. I could have made them, I know so many photographers, they could have all been about photography. But I wanted to stress that creativity can occur in so many different areas and ways. Even a motorcycle racer is a creative person, very creative. And somebody who is an architect is obviously very creative. Somebody who builds a business with a very creative model, or a parent who helps their children become more creative. So I kind of wanted to stress all these different areas that one could, show their creativity and not just have it be focused on one area.
Yeah, no, I find it just fits so well, the fact that you had this, create is like the simplest thing is usually the best thing, and the fact that you got the tagline is much longer, and you got that in the shower, and we were talking a few weeks ago about how it's so important to just switch off and do something else when you're trying to, we focus, trying to get the thing to where you don't get it. You actually let it go and do something else, and then it comes to you, and that is so true so many times.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have an exercise. One of the chapters in the book is why you should take long walks, and because in walking, there was a study that was done at Stanford University, right near where I live. They actually found that by walking alone, you can increase your creativity by 60%. This was a scientific study, and I believe that because exactly what you said happens. You get so fixed on something, especially in our modern world where we're looking at computer screens all day long, or even our phone. If you can get away from that, look at trees, look at rocks, look at other people who are hiking, and dogs and birds, and your mind gets unlocked. And all of a sudden, I can't tell you how many times I've solved a problem just by going for a walk. Whether it's about the book or it's a personal thing or whatever, it's a very important tool. And by the way, Leonardo da Vinci, who I tried to track down as best I could in Florence. I went to several of his museums and actually met up with a Da Vinci expert and talked to him about the book that I was writing, because I do quote him a couple of places. But one of the things Da Vinci said was, carry a notebook with you when you walk around and draw and write about people that you see. And try to observe their hands, their feet, their facial expressions when they're mad, when they're sad. Don't just be sort of two-dimensional about it, but really soak in everything you can about it and about them. And you'll use that as material in your creative process. And one of the things he did was he used illustrations for The Last Supper from people that he saw in pubs. I don't know what, you probably didn't call them a pub, but he saw these facial expressions and used them later on. And it's part of your kind of mental library that you're acquiring.
I wonder what Da Vinci would have done with a mirrorless camera.
Wow. He probably would have designed it for sure. And
they're like, this isn't good enough. Let's make it better.
He would have definitely redesigned it somehow. He'd be talking to one of the camera manufacturers for sure about how you can make it better.
So one of the things that I like about the book is that it's not one of those books where people talk about creativity in very abstract terms, but it's very practical, right? There's exercises at the end of every chapter, and there's a way of organizing the thoughts, your ideas about creativity in what you call the cycle of creativity and its parts, which are the visualization, tools, craft, editing, and sharing. So I have thought of organizing this conversation, talking about those different parts of the cycle. Maybe if you can give a little definition of what it is, and maybe some examples. So visualization. What is visualization, and can you maybe give an example, example of a technique that you use to improve your visualization skills?
Absolutely. So visualization means seeing in your mind, mentally or spiritually, what it is you're envisioning, what you want to create. Ansel Adams, the first person I heard mention it was Ansel Adams. However, the word was around before he brought it up. He said the whole key to a photograph is your ability to visualize it. In other words, if you're just pressing the shutter, you're taking snapshots. Snap, 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 snap. But the moment you visualize the photograph, you're now creating a piece of art. And from that, I actually learned that any art form is using visualization, whether it's visually or in some other way. Like a musician, I give examples of the Beach Boys. When Brian Wilson created his masterpiece, Pet Sounds, he visualized every musical instrument in that, and then he went into the studio and actually had them play it. But first he mentally visualized it. When I was redesigning my house, we bought a house in Carmel that fortunately the people who had it before us didn't really do a great job of designing it. So we were able to acquire this phenomenal house that needed a lot of work, which is something I enjoy doing also. But we visualized exactly how we wanted it to look. And then with the contractor, basically made that happen. So you can see lots of different examples of visualization. It's just getting the idea before you do anything and getting a very clear vision of what you want. When you two decided to put this podcast together, I'm sure you had a vision for it before you even recorded your first show. And that's how art comes about. So the next phase is knowing your tools. Because if you just have a vision but you can't put it into any kind of physical sense because you don't know the tools, then nothing happens. And those tools could be anywhere from a piano to a pen to a camera or a keyboard. Whatever it is, you have to know those tools, and you have to know them well enough to be able to not have them get in the way. Bob Holmes, who I've interviewed a number of times on my YouTube channel, is a fantastic travel photographer. He won the Travel Photographer of the Year like 14 times, something remarkable like that. But he said, don't let the camera get in the way of your photography. Those are good words, because a lot of times we let our tools get in the way of what we're trying to do. Once we have our tools down, we have to create. And I call that working your craft, meaning get in there and do it. Work. Writing a book is work. You have to wake up every morning and face a blank keyboard or a blank piece of paper and fill it up. So you got to work at it. And, any art form, there's work involved.
I have a question about this in your chapter about craft and saying you need to do a lot of work, and we know that very well. We've talked about this in previous episodes of this show. And you give the example of Jack London, who sat down at his desk every morning to write 1,500 words. And
That's
he would
right.
not get up until he had written 1,500 words.
Stephen King is the same, isn't he? Stephen King does the same thing, doesn't he?
Yeah,
most authors have done that. Stephen King is even higher. He's up over 2,000 words, I think, maybe 2,500. But every day, no matter what.
So based on that example, you say that you want to turn your reader into a 24/7 creativity machine.
Yeah.
But what would be your answer to those who object? And I've had this. I mean, I have this thought sometimes myself. Who has time for this? Because we have a job, we have a family to keep us busy, and even people who have a 100% creative profession, because they're writers, photographers, full-time, and so on, we know that we must spend like 80%, if not 90% of our time on the business side of things.
Right, marketing and whatnot.
How can we be 24/7 creative if we have all those commitments and work to do and things that have nothing to do with creativity?
That is a big question. You look like you have something to say, though. Or are you just waiting for the answer?
Well, because I had to go through this. And I can tell you, business can be creative. Cooking can be creative. Doing laundry can be creative. Raising your kids can be creative. Hoovering can be, because I hate doing it. So if it's no fun, I don't do it.
Hoovering?
So vacuum cleaning.
Okay, no, I think that's, I just wanted to make sure I knew what you were saying. I love it.
I just don't do it. I guess. But, there's some, I remember I had huge windows in a house in Milan, like big, walk through, big wall to wall, and hated cleaning those windows when the kids were small. So we used to soap them up and make shapes and play with them. And then we would, cool. Get the thing off. Yeah. So you can be, I know Marc's got more to say about this, but I totally believe you can make anything creative in a way.
You just answer the question. I don't need to say anything further. It's true. Okay, so let's talk about it. So first of all, you're right, Ugo, life gets in the way all the time. It's unfortunate, but true. It just gets in the way. But somehow, here's the deal. There's two parts to this answer. One is time is probably the number one barrier that people bring up. As you said, I have all these other things I have to do. So one of the chapters I wrote was about how to manage your time. Not that I'm like perfect myself, believe me, I'm not, but I wanted to give an exercise that somebody could really look at their schedule and see where they're probably wasting a lot of time. I've observed over the years that when people tell me and argue with me, I just don't have time for that. I don't have time. They're using all their energy against themselves. Like, they're wasting so much time telling me they can't do it that if they actually just said, okay, let me do it, they would probably get it done fairly easily. But it's when you're arguing against yourself that way, it's like driving a car with the gas and the brake on at the same time. Take your foot off the brake and maybe it'll go a lot easier. So part of it is, one of the early chapters I talk about purpose. And purpose is so senior to even your schedule. If you have a purpose to do something, you're going to get it done. And that purpose could be any of those things that you mentioned, Fabrizio, like, washing your windows. I need to get the windows washed, but I want to do it with some kind of creativity with the kids or whatever. You made it into a fun activity. That's great. That's brilliant. I never thought about designing things with the soap. That's great.
Yeah, you just got me thinking. I was in a conversation today with a friend, another photographer, a possible business partner, and we're discussing ways that we could make this partnership work. And we are at the same time, we're also competitors. So we stayed on the phone for maybe 2 hours discussing how we can make competition work between us. And it was a lot of creative thinking went into that. Now, of course, then I had to prepare some invoices. There's not a lot of creativity there for sure, but that was just a little...
That's pretty good. Well, I think the thing is, we're not going to hit 100% on the 24/7 idea. I know that. But I was trying to at least enlighten the readers to the fact that even in the night, you can have these inspiring moments. I wrote about how, the Rolling Stones song came about, I Can't Get No Satisfaction, because he woke up in the middle of the night and recorded it and then came back the next day and thought, well, that's not bad. He didn't even remember that Keith Richards didn't even remember that he had recorded it.
That's the first record I ever bought.
Really? Satisfaction?
My mother was not happy. I was 6 years old.
Oh, that's pretty early.
Yeah. Anyway, funny.
That's pretty funny. But, that's the thing. It's like we can open up the idea that one can live a more creative life. And it's like anything. You're not going to get there in one fell swoop, If you decide you want to become good at golf or tennis or swimming or surfing or whatever, you don't get there in a day. But you first have to decide that's something you want to pursue. And I think if we can trim away some of the distractions and steer towards, more of what we really want in our life. Because I guess one of the things, and I need to kind of underscore this, why are we so interested in creativity in the first place? What's so important about it? Isn't that what makes life a joyful experience? Isn't it what sets us apart from, the animal kingdom? We're the ones who can stand upright and create something and make something that's very different than, any other species is kind of stuck with whatever they've got, and we're the ones that can make that change and change the environment and fit it to what we really envision ourselves. That to me is why creativity is so important.
Yeah, I really like the example of Jack London because I think it underscores a point that is, you don't do the work because you feel inspired and you feel creative. I think you do the work because by doing the work, you will get inspiration, will find inspiration and become creative.
Yeah.
So do the work no matter what. That's the...
Yeah, and sometimes you
secret,
don't want
right?
to do it. Yeah, it is. It's just like a person who has a job washing dishes. They may not be inspired, but if they want to earn enough money to live, so that maybe they have their 3 hours every night after they wash dishes and they can write the book that they want to write or learn to paint or whatever. Hemingway was a starving writer in Paris, just starving. He basically lived in these cheap flats and scrounged sort of his meals together, and he wasn't an overnight success. But because he stuck with it and he really was able to see that if I write every day, then I'm going to get better and better, he eventually became this great author that we revere. But it didn't happen just because he wanted it one day, and he had to work at it.
I also think, that people get stuck in the idea that if you're creative or you do something creative, it's got to be good. It's got to be great. You got to show it to the world. It's going to be amazing. It's like we produce 100 things, 99 of which are not good.
Right.
One is good. 99 are not good. But the point is not that one. The point is that we're having fun doing it. To me, creativity is like, because I don't like to do a lot of stuff like washing windows, I will find fun ways to do the work. You have to get me kicking and screaming to do, the business things. And I teach business, by the way, to photographers. So, and I find it incredibly satisfying and creative. But I had to make it fun for me to actually the work, study, read, put things together. I create like boards and this and stuff, and I make a big mess even when, the house usually looks like this all the time, actually. So it's not, but we have these expectations that if you do something creative, then it's got to be a showpiece. You got to show it to the world. If it's not good enough, then it's creativity feeds itself. It's because of doing it that we love doing it. And then every now and then something good comes out. And then you publish a book or a picture or something. Then that's fine.
Yeah, and you brought up a really important point, which I know is one of the questions that you had to go, which is editing. Because, listen, even the great artists, Stephen King has a process where he just writes and writes and writes and writes. And then when he's done with the whole manuscript, he goes back and edits it. Very good advice. Don't try to edit while you're producing. Just let it flow. Then come back and edit it, and you'll find there's a lot that you can throw away. Like he throws away like 15% of whatever he wrote, and he trims it down. And that's another really important part of the whole creative process is editing. It's a different hat, and some people enjoy it more than others. I'll tell you what's interesting for me is one of my favorite activities as a filmmaker is in the editing process. I really enjoy it. I really enjoy taking hours of footage and somehow piecing it together in a cohesive way into a really good story. But what does it involve but throwing away lots of stuff? It's all about trimming away the stuff that you really don't need and leaving what's really important. In editing a photograph, you go through maybe hundreds of photos that you shot, even thousands, and you come across the ones that you really like, then you edit those. So it's a process of elimination. And Picasso was an unusual artist where it didn't matter what he did, any of those super famous artists, they could be creating the silliest thing on the back of a matchbook or something. It's going to be a work of art. Well, that's just because they were at such a level, it didn't matter anymore. But for the rest of us, we do have to refine and we do have to select what we want to show to the world or not.
There's that famous quote of Mark Twain that I always quote to everybody who works with me, especially when we're talking about writing text and copywriting or writing for your blog or website, whatever. And he, in his letters to a friend, a lady friend of his, and he said, I would have written you a shorter letter, but I didn't have the time.
That is so true. I know. And I use that with my video editing all the time.
Yeah.
Somebody says, can we make a 90-second version of this or a 30-second or whatever? Yeah. But, it's not just like that easy. It takes a lot of time to eliminate things. But I love that quote too. That's fantastic. I quoted Twain here in a few places in my book.
And you also mentioned Picasso, and you have an example when you use Picasso as an example in the section about sharing and about finding your focus. So do you want to explain that example to our listeners? Because I really like it, because I used a similar one in an article that I wrote some time ago.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is the quote you're referring to, but Picasso said, the purpose of art is washing the dust off daily life off our souls. I'm going to read that again because that's the purpose of art is washing the dust of daily life off our souls. Is that the one you're referring to?
No, that's great, but I was actually referring to where you say that Picasso went through various periods during his artistic career, right? He had a blue period, a rose period, and he was a cubist, and he was an abstractist, and all those things. But in the end, he was Picasso. I mean, he created his own genre, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And in my article, I used that as an example of saying that you can pursue different when you share your work, when you show your work to the world. You can be a jack of all trades and do a lot of things. And I think it's fine to pursue different directions. in your career. But then in the end, I believe you need to choose what you want to be famous for, if you want to be famous. So,
that's something that I found in common with most of the people that I interviewed brought that up in one way or another. Chris Burkhardt, who is a phenomenon on Instagram, I don't know, he's over 3 million, followers. He said that as well. He said, look, just figure out what your focus is, because if you're all over the place, I'm a portrait photographer, I'm a landscape photographer, I can do weddings, I'll do commercial work. Nobody knows what you are. They're confused. Our mind is already too cluttered with so much stuff in it that if we don't have a clear what's called position, it's really hard to say what that person is. Annie Leibovitz is a good example. She is a celebrity portrait photographer. However, she really wants to shoot landscapes and all sorts of family type photographs. But what she gets paid for is her celebrity portraiture. So it's really good advice to figure out the genre that you most want to master and go for it. And it's fine. You can shoot any kind of photograph you want or any kind of artwork you want. But become known to the world with that genre and get it mastered, and then maybe you can add to it.
Yeah. I have people tell me that they don't want to be labeled. They don't want to be put in a box. But my answer to them is that it doesn't matter. People will put you in a box and will label you no matter what. There's nothing
They're going to do
about
it whether you like it or not.
Exactly.
So it's better for you to do it than to have somebody else say, oh, he's just an eclectic artist, let's say. Well, what does that mean? That means you're all over the map. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't it be better to have a label that somebody says, this guy's really skilled at portraiture. He captures environmental portraits incredibly well. Fantastic. Okay.
And also, I think people are bombarded by so many, like, say, photographers. There's thousands, millions, everybody's a photographer. Thing is, if people don't perceive you as an expert in something, they're not going to turn to you for anything. Where people look for someone who knows more than them and is an expert in that thing. If I am looking, if I need a brain operation, I'm going to a neurosurgeon. I'm not going to a GP or somebody who does, anything. You want that specialist. Exactly. Yes. So, and it's the same in any creative art. If you want to turn it into a business, of course, but also if you do it as an amateur, because, we all want to be recognized for something that we bring to the world. And I think if you are creative and you keep hacking away at one thing, you're going to get good at it and you're going to bring something special to it. Your own.
You're absolutely right.
If you don't, if you can't bring your own spin to everything, you only got one spin to give, basically.
Yeah. And even if you do go into other spins, because I've done that, you should master each one before you move on. Otherwise, you're kind of all over the place, as you say, and it doesn't bring you the satisfaction that you're looking for either.
Okay, we've gone through the various parts of the creativity cycle.
Yeah.
Now I would like to, before we wrap this up, I would like to ask you about the interviews that you have in the book. You've interviewed a number of people. You mentioned Chris Burkhardt, for example, and others. Of all the people you interviewed, who did you strike the most?
The one that really surprised me the most was Chris McCaskill, who is the co-founder of SmugMug. And SmugMug, has become pretty much the number one photo sharing site, and they also acquired Flickr, so they kind of own the whole space. Chris McCaskill, because of his mother actually, unfortunately, had schizophrenia, and they ended up on the streets of Oakland, which is at that time was a very rough part across from San Francisco, homeless, as a homeless kid, living under bridges, never taking showers, horrible conditions. And eventually he tells the story about how he, got out of that and went on to earn his MBA at Stanford, worked with Steve Jobs, and became a serial entrepreneur of many successful businesses. But what I found most interesting about his interview was how appreciative he is every day of things that many of us take for granted. And he said, every day I appreciate these things. The fact that you could take a warm shower, or that you open up a refrigerator and there's food in it, or that you can afford to even be creative. I mean, if you're a homeless kid, you don't have the resources. You don't have a camera. You don't have an ability to paint anything or write music. You're just trying to live. You're trying to keep from, starving and dying of cold under a bridge. So what he described to me was just his appreciative outlook is so high compared to most people who take all these things for granted. And I found that really very interesting. It really resonated for me. I've never been a homeless person, but I know what it's like to have virtually nothing. I've kind of gone through that at one point or another in my life, and to build up to a point where you have the means and the resources to sit down and write a book or to pursue your interests, that's something we should never take for granted. And I thought it was remarkable, his story.
I know Chris, we had not really well, we had a couple of interactions online, but I didn't know about his background, so that's...
It's pretty amazing. Yeah, he told me about it one day. We were setting up for a workshop at Smug Mug, and he just happened to mention this. I thought, what? He says, yeah, I was homeless on the streets. I had no idea until I really interviewed him. And it was really kind of him, because obviously that's not something that's easy to open up to the world about. It's not something that we all would want. It wasn't so much he didn't want others to know about it, but it's painful for him to talk about it as well. But he was generous in allowing me to ask him about it and talk about it. And it really, I feel, is an important part of the book. One of the things I loved about doing these interviews is that each one of these creatives had such a unique viewpoint, but by the same token, they also had common things that they all said. Like, one of the things that almost every one of them mentioned is, we all have these inner demons. We have those voices that kick us around and say, you're an imposter, you're not good enough, and right? But you have to overcome that.
There's that famous Jack Nicholson quote that I love, that he says,
"Tell me.
I try not to listen to the voices in my head, but damn, do they come up with good ideas."
That's pretty good. Well, Jack is one of a kind.
Exactly right.
That's pretty good. But it just shows even these people who were fantastically celebrated artists had to overcome these things. And one of the things I was trying to show in the book is they're just people like the rest of us. They weren't born with some, special creative gene. They had to work at it. And, again, it's just, I hope, is inspiring for people who want to become more creative and realize the stuff they're going through, we all have to go through that. It's not unique to one person to overcome these financial barriers, emotional barriers. The stories are just remarkable. And that's part of the whole creative process.
Yes, absolutely. And the gratefulness I find, we've been through, I relate to that completely. And I don't see any great things coming from people who just feel entitled. It just doesn't happen, so it's gratefulness is a big part of it, realizing it's all a gift, and then recognizing the gift and then bringing it out. And the generosity, you mentioned some people I don't know, but some people that I have met that have done really wonderful things, are great artists. They all have this type of giving spirit, because you realize you have been given so much, and you just channel to put it into the world. And yes, of course, you're going to be paid for it. You've got to make a living out of it. And the more you can do that, the more people you can impact and help and, do that. And that's also my vision. But I don't see many kind of measly, entitled little imps making it big in the creative world. It doesn't.
I'm afraid you're absolutely right. I agree with you 100%. It's a generosity, and that's something I noticed when I was doing my YouTube interviews, how generous these guys were. These people that I interviewed were just, and some weren't. When I asked them to be on the show, they were kind of, I don't know if I want to give away all my secrets. And obviously those people I didn't interview. But it was a very small percentage that gave me that kind of response. Most people did want to share their knowledge, which I thought was fantastic.
I found that, being Italian, I'm really into food, not just wine, food as well. And I end up in kitchens, in restaurants, I end up befriending the chefs, and that's how I learned to cook, and that's how I learned to, appreciate good food. And there are two types of chefs in the world, and I realize this applies to any kind of artist or any kind of, person. And there's the ones when you eat something wonderful and you say, like, can I have the recipe? And one will say, oh, no, it's a secret, and, it's just, they don't. And the other one will say, yeah, of course, you do this, and that, and they give you similar quantities because they make it. But the thing is that they know you will never make it the same. Never
make it the same.
So it's fine. I can tell you how to do it. It's no secret, because, you will still come here and eat mine. You're not.
That's right.
Taking anything away. And so that's the thing. And people split exactly that way.
True. Well, I make fantastic pesto, but I will never give away my recipe.
But I have one too.
I'm sure you do. We all have our pesto recipes, but it's important. I totally know what you mean. It's sort of like saying, here's a camera, go take photographs like Annie Leibovitz. Okay, great.
People ask me, what are your presets? Oh, good God.
What are your settings for that photo?
Like it really matters. I mean, come on. I know.
Okay, so I really love this interview, this conversation. It was not even an interview; it was really a really fun and engaging conversation. And I knew what to expect from you, Marc, and you did deliver. It's been great. So, Fabrizia, we definitely need to do more interviews or conversation with other guests like this. We're going to do more in the future to just
we'll do Marc again.
Marc again. Anytime, just let me know.
The next book, we want you as a guest.
It's already about 2/3 done, as a matter of fact.
2/3.
You can't ask him to write a book every time he wants to come on an interview.
Yeah, that's true. We could schedule him in between.
Okay.
I love it.
But this book, so I'll just remind again, everyone, it's called Create, Tools from Seriously Talented People to Unleash Your Creative Life. Sorry. Where can people find the book? I guess Amazon, Barnes & Noble, usual places. But
it's on all the usual places. If you go to Amazon, you just type in my name, Marc Silber, MarcSilb, like boy, ER, Silber. You'll find it along with my other books, or go to my website, which is silberstudios.com. And that, again, is with a B. And what you'll find is my books, and also if you order the book before it comes out, we'll give you what we call a pre-order bonus. If you come back to the website, you'll be able to download a quick start guide to creativity, which is kind of fun. Yeah. And the other thing that I've done with all my previous books, and I'll do with this one, is I create a digital resource page. So this makes it kind of interactive. You're reading a book that's in print, but there's websites or people that I mention or whatever. So I put all those links and resources and even videos on the website, so you can check in with those things as you're reading the book. I'm like that. When I read a book, I always like to kind of get in depth with whatever the author's talking about, and I'll do my own research sometimes or whatever. So we're trying to make that process really easy. But that's where you can find the book. And one of the things I hope to hear from people who read it, because at the end of every chapter, I ask questions that I'm hoping will stimulate people to do things, because this isn't supposed to be a mental exercise. It's all about doing stuff. It's all about getting into action. And I'm asking questions to hopefully get the reader to look at their own life and how these things apply to them, and also action steps that they can follow to make changes. Because going back to your point, Ugo, about how do you get more creative in your life if all these other things are getting in the way? Well, it's a process. And so I'm trying to help people achieve that on a step-by-step basis. So it's really important to do those exercises.
Yeah, and actually, after this podcast, we have, underneath here, we have a thing that people can actually record a message and ask a question or say something. So the thing is now, the challenge is now off you go, get the book, and then come back to the podcast underneath here and start, tell us all of the questions, all of the things that you're going through, and then we'll get Mark back again.
Absolutely.
To shoot them all at him, in a month's time or something.
I love it. I'd love to do that. I think that would be fabulous.
Good game. So see how many we get. But if you're serious about any of this, you've got to do it. Come on, leave your messages. And we want to hear, because otherwise we're just here talking to ourselves, and that's not very good.
We like to have conversations with.
So now we have a book that you can work on. And so Fantastic. Off you go. Off you go.
It's a standing invitation. I'm ready to reappear whenever you need me. Would be our pleasure. So that's been great. Just going to remind everyone that this episode and all the others can be found at our website at closingthegap.live. And silberstudios.com. That's yours.
That's right. Yep.
And we never mention our own respective website, Fabrizia. Maybe we should for once. What's your website?
FabriziaCosta.com. Very boring, but effective.
It's very clear, easy to find. Mine is a bit more complicated. It's just ucphoto.me. So if people want to know more about us, they can find us there. Okay, that's been really great conversation. I hope we can repeat it again.
Great to meet you, Mark.
Same here. I look forward to one day meeting you in person when we come back to Italy.
I'm coming to California to LA for a workshop, either winter or February. So I'm just dealing with that. And if I come to California, then yes, it's a given.
It's a short drive to Carmel. You should make it for sure.
Yeah, right. I'll keep you posted.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.